this man, Kevin Stefanski, was it like 11 quarterbacks over the last 4 years?
Right.
Was it something like that?
Right.
I mean, you talk about 13 quarterbacks since 2020. Damn, you can't find somebody that works?
Right.
Somebody? I mean, Baker Mayfield looks pretty damn good without you. Okay? Yeah. You know, you see other quarterbacks, they're looking relatively decent.
I'm going to say it again. Kevin Stefanski must be fired. I'm going to say it again and again and again.
That these dudes take all that and then they ship them off, and then you play them a little bit and then ship them off, and you got two kids who have never done anything. That, to me, is malpractice.
If no one seems to work for you as an offensive mind at the quarterback position, how can I look at Shedeur Sanders? I might have to look at you and say, you might be the reason Shedeur Sanders is looking the way he's looking.
The Browns just got humiliated by the Chicago Bears in freezing temperatures, losing 31-3. Shedeur Sanders threw 3 interceptions. He was sacked 5 times. The offense couldn't score a touchdown if their lives depended on it. This was ugly, the kind of ugly that makes you question an entire franchise. But here's the twist. After the beating, Kevin Stefanski was asked about his job security. His answer? Shocking.
I don't get into those type of things, Mary Kay. I would just tell you, my focus, our football team's focus is solely on the Buffalo Bills, and obviously watching the tape today, that's our focus, but that's all we really care about.
Meaning, I'm not answering that because I don't want to admit my offense is a complete disaster and that I might be the problem. Now, everyone's been talking about Shedeur Sanders. Makes sense. He's the quarterback, he's young, he's got the famous last name and the primetime connection. But Stephen A. Smith is cutting through the noise and asking the question nobody else will. Why does every quarterback look terrible in Kevin Stefanski's offense? Think about this. Since 2020, the Cleveland Browns have gone through 13 different starting quarterbacks. 13. That's not bad luck. That's not coincidence. That's a pattern. That's a complete system failure. Eventually, you've got to stop blaming the players and start looking at the coach.
I mean, Baker Mayfield looks pretty damn good without you. Okay? Yeah. You know, you see other quarterbacks, they're looking relatively decent.
The Browns' offense this year is dead last in yards per play, dead last in total QBR, 30th in yards per game, 29th in offensive points per game. These aren't just bad stats. These are historically awful numbers for a team with a supposedly offensive-minded head coach.
What was Kevin Stefanski before he arrived in Cleveland?
Right.
He was the offensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings, okay? But here we are in this year. Look at the Browns' offense this year.
And here's the kicker. Stefanski built his reputation as an offensive coordinator. That was his whole identity. That's exactly why Cleveland hired him. He was the offensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings, brought in specifically to fix Cleveland's offensive problems. 5 years later, the offense has never been worse. Let's focus on Shedeur Sanders for a moment, because this kid deserves better than what he's getting. He took over in Week 12, and the numbers are brutal. The Browns are averaging just 16 points per game with him under center, second worst scoring offense in the entire league, only ahead of the pathetic Las Vegas Raiders. His passer percentage sits at 56%, ranking 23rd among qualified starters. He's thrown 5 interceptions, tied for most in the NFL during that stretch. His passer rating is 76, again, 23rd among qualified starters. Those stats look awful on the surface, but here's the context. This kid is playing behind an offensive line that's getting him killed. He's throwing to receivers who can't get open. He's operating in an offensive system that has failed quarterback after quarterback after quarterback. And somehow, everyone wants to blame Shedeur Sanders while Kevin Stefanski gets a free pass because he's won Coach of the Year twice. Dan Orlovsky made a critical point during the debate about how Cleveland handled their quarterback situation this season. They brought in Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett at the start of the year, gave them almost no reps, then shipped them out before throwing 2 young quarterbacks who've never proven anything in the NFL straight into the fire. That's not player development. That's organizational malpractice.
The Flacco and Kenny Pickett at the beginning was craziness. That these dudes take all that and then they ship them off, and then you play them a little bit and then ship them off, and you got 2 kids who have never done anything.
There's a fascinating debate happening. Who has more at stake right now? Shedeur Sanders or Kevin Stefanski? The analysts are split. One side says Stefanski has more to lose because he's the established coach with the big reputation. The other side, and this one's gaining steam, says Shedeur has everything on the line because Stefanski will get hired somewhere else no matter what. He's a two-time coach of the year. Some desperate franchise will take him. But Shedeur, if he fails in Cleveland, who's giving him another real shot? That's the tragedy here. Young quarterbacks get one shot, maybe two, to prove themselves in the NFL. If they fail, they're done. Coaches, they just keep getting recycled. Matt Patricia destroyed the Detroit Lions and still got coordinator jobs with the Patriots and Eagles. Nathaniel Hackett bombed in Denver and immediately landed another offensive coordinator gig. The NFL is a coach's protection program, but players get one chance. Stephen A. brought up Baker Mayfield, and that comparison is absolutely devastating for Stefanski. Baker Mayfield looked inconsistent and frustrating in Cleveland. The Browns gave up on him, traded him away, made it seem like he was the problem. What's he doing now? Thriving in Tampa Bay, looking like the quarterback everyone thought he'd be when he went first off. He's confident, productive, winning games. What changed? Not Baker Mayfield. Everything around him. The same story keeps repeating with quarterbacks who leave Cleveland. They escape that building, get away from that offense, leave Stefanski's system behind, and suddenly they look competent again. When does that stop being a coincidence and start being proof? Here's what should really frustrate Browns fans, and what should have ownership asking hard questions. The defense is actually good. Jim Schwartz has that unit playing at a high level. They're competitive, they're keeping games close, they're giving the offense every chance to win. But the offense is so broken, so incompetent, so poorly coached that none of it matters.
What you do, what your signature is, fellas, is what I hang my hat on. So as we sit here today talking about the Cleveland Browns, right? And you just brought up Jeff Saturday, you brought up Schwartz and how he's got that defense looking, okay?
Stephen A. nailed it. Your calling card as a coach is what got you the job. If you're a defensive coach and your defense is terrible, you're gone. If you're an offensive coach and your offense is the worst in the league, why are you still employed? Demoka Ryans is a defensive coach in Houston. If his defense was trash, he'd be on the hot seat immediately. Robert Saleh was a defensive coach with the Jets, and when his defense couldn't carry the team, he got fired. So why is Kevin Stefanski immune to criticism when his offense, the thing he's supposed to be an expert at, is a complete disaster? The Browns have talent on offense. They've invested high draft picks. They've brought in free agents. They have playmakers. And yet, nothing works. Nothing clicks. The system doesn't adapt to the players. It forces the players into a rigid scheme that doesn't work. That's on coaching. That's on scheme. That's on Kevin Stefanski. Let's be clear, this isn't about hating Stefanski as a person or even as a coach overall. He's clearly intelligent, he's clearly respected around the league, but sometimes it's just not the right fit. Sometimes a coach and an organization aren't meant to succeed together. The evidence is overwhelming now that whatever Stefanski is trying to do in Cleveland isn't working on the field.
In this year, look at the Browns offense this year. Yards per play last, total QBR last, yards per game 30th, offensive points per game 29th. That's horrid.
The debate about whether the Browns should draft another quarterback in 2026 is already started, and that's insane. They just brought in Shedeur Sanders. They haven't even given him a full season to develop, to learn, to adjust to the NFL. But the organization is already eyeing the next shiny prospect because they have zero faith in their ability to develop the talent they already have. Shedeur Sanders deserves better than becoming the next name on Cleveland's graveyard of failed quarterbacks. He deserves competent coaching. He deserves an offensive line that actually protects him. He deserves a system that plays to his strengths instead of forcing him into a rigid scheme that doesn't work for anyone. More than that, Browns fans deserve better. They've endured decades of quarterback chaos, coaching turnover, and organizational dysfunction. They've watched Baker Mayfield, Deshaun Watson, Jacoby Brissett, and now Shedeur Sanders all struggle in the same offense under the same coach. When does someone in that building finally say enough is enough? The Cleveland Browns face a critical decision. They can keep running the same failed experiment, cycling through quarterbacks while pretending Kevin Stefanski will magically figure it out in year 6, or they can face reality that whatever Stefanski is selling in Cleveland isn't working in Cleveland, and it's time for a change. Stephen A. Smith is right to call out this pattern. He's right to demand accountability from the coaching staff instead of scapegoating another young quarterback. And he's right to ask the question everyone should be asking. Kevin Stefanski, does any quarterback work for you? Because if the answer is no, and all the evidence says it is, then maybe the problem isn't the 13 quarterbacks who've come through Cleveland. Maybe the problem is the one constant who's been there the entire time. The Browns are 3-14. The offense is the worst in the NFL. Shedeur Sanders is taking the blame for a system-wide failure, and Kevin Stefanski is still getting the benefit of the doubt. How much longer can this go on before someone in Cleveland finally realizes the emperor has no clothes, and their offensive genius can't actually coach offense? That's the question, that's the crisis, and that's exactly why Stephen A. is completely justified in blasting Kevin Stefanski for what's happening in Cleveland right now.